Greetings guys and gals, my name is Thad and today I want to show you 5 things that you should avoid in the chess opening when you're playing with white. So let's just start. The first thing that I see with beginners all the time is that they try to develop the queen on d1 way too early. I mean, it only makes sense, like it is the strongest piece in the game, so you want to get it out very quickly, but that can lead to a lot of trouble early on. Let's just say e4, e5, and then white just wants to develop the queen with something like g4, and already black has just the option to play d6, continue developing and opening up this diagonal for the bishop to just take the queen, so you have to move the queen away, let's say g3. And then black can just play something like c6 is completely fine, and as you can see, black has a much more developed structure. The knight has already come out, the bishop has this diagonal to go to, and yeah, white is just more closed off. Like this bishop is still being blocked, the pawns are not developed at all, so black is just way better here, and only because white wanted to get out the queen as quickly as possible. For this it is very important to remember that yeah, basically the queen is the strongest piece in the game, but it's also kind of the weakest because it has to move once it is attacked, and basically black only gains the upper hand by having more moves in the early game when attacking the queen. So that is something you should try to avoid. I can even show you this from the other side. So let's say you start c4, e5, and then queen a4, and black is completely fine. You can just continue developing with, let's say, c6. So let's say white wants to get his knight out as well, f3, and then we have d6, and then you have to always worry that this bishop will come to d7 and basically trying to attack your queen. So you're gonna have to move it sooner or later, wasting yet another move when black can just, you know, continue developing as normal. Alright, so the second thing that you should try to avoid in the opening is to repeat moves, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So let's just say e4, d5, the Scandinavian defense, and then you see that this diagonal to the king is open, so you're going to play something like bishop b5. Black just blocks with bishop d7. Let's just say you don't want to trade bishops, so you want to move your bishop back and you go back to f1. But f1 is a very disadvantageous square for you because you basically given black a free move, this d7 move continuing his development, and now he's again he can just take the pawn, or he can just continue developing. So you just basically gave black a move for free. So yeah, don't repeat moves. If you want to move this bishop back, I mean, I would take here, but if you want to move the bishop back, I don't know, d3 would be an idea. So you have this. Or, you know, you can also go e2, so you have this diagonal to go to in the future. But f1 is basically just a terrible move, as, yeah, it's just not a good idea in the opening, as a chess beginner at least. Okay, so the next thing you want to avoid in the opening is to force your rooks out. I have seen this many times, especially with beginners. They're trying to get the rooks into the game as early as possible because they think, well, the rook is the strongest piece besides the queen, so let's just get them into the field way too early. So let's just say they start something like h4, black just develops normally with something like d6, and already you have a problem because you can't move your rook here. If you go there, of course the bishop is eyeing that field, so you have to place something like h5 to get the rook even there. But again, black can just completely ignore that and even play e5. The rook can still not go here because the queen is eyeing that field, and just look at that difference in development. White can't get their bishops out, white can get the queen out, white could get the knights out, but it's basically, you know, black is way better developed, so you should try to avoid forcing your rooks in the open. It's the same on the other side, like on the a side, let's say a4. Black just plays something like e5, and already again the bishop is eyeing that square, so this rook will never come into action, at least not until the black side is completely developed and white is still completely shut off from the game, has no center control whatsoever. So I would say under no circumstance whatsoever should you ever try to, you know, force your rooks into the game too early. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is that as a beginner you should avoid to open up both sides. And what I mean by that is that you can make out two sides here, one going from A to C and the other going from H to F. So those are the two sides that the king could go to in the later game. So if you want a castle, it's going to be either on this side or this side, and basically you should keep this side closed on which you want a castle. So if I know, okay, I want a castle king side, then let's just say e3, e5, and then something like bishop c4, pawn f6. I'm just going to get the pieces out. Knight f3, knight c6, and then you want to castle. So you know, okay, I want to castle kingside, so I need to keep this side closed, because any pawn that is moved here, or every pawn that is moved here, will create a potential weakness. Maybe not the h pawn, but definitely the g pawn. So if you move the you shouldn't move the g pawn if you know, okay, I want to castle kingside, and you should definitely never ever consider moving the f pawn. Don't move the f pawn if you know that you're going to castle kingside, because this is just a tremendous weakness, especially if black still has their black square bishop and their queen. This, if you're gonna move this f pawn, you're gonna have a bad time, because the king is going to get attacked here. So yeah, don't open up this side if you know we want to castle here. And it's basically the same thing on the queen side. Let's just say e4, e5, d3, d6, and then you have something like, I don't know, yeah, e3, and then knight f6, knight c3, knight c6, and then he's just going to move his queen, let's say to f3, and let's just not even consider that I could easily attack his queen here. So let's just say I'm playing something silly like, I don't know, e7, and then you want to castle queenside, and it's the same thing here basically. Eventually you want to think about getting your king to b1, because he's much safer there, and you should be very careful when opening up this side if you know. So back there. So you should be careful with moving either of the sides, but what you should definitely try to avoid is moving both pawns. So let's just say f4, f5. Let's say you immediately go for b4, and already it's a very bad position, and it's going to cost you dearly in the end game, because the king will basically have no safe squares to go in the future. I would advise you basically to focus on the d and e pawns in general in the opening, but that's going to be a video for another time. Alright, so the last thing that I want to talk about is that as a beginner you shouldn't play over the edge of the board in the opening, meaning that you should scratch moves like pawn a4 or pawn h4, or knight g3 and knight a3. Just completely scratch these moves in the opening, as they really provide no benefit whatsoever if you don't know what you're doing. So if you play pawn a4, basically you have no control in the center. Same thing with h4, and even these knight moves. Let's show this one. Let's show this one. Let's show this one as example. So after you played h3, you basically, the knight only can keep an eye on g5 and f4, while when you play something like f3, it has an eye on way more squares basically. Okay, so the second example I have prepared for this is why you should try to avoid to play with your bishop on the edge of the board as a beginner, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show it to you now. So let's just say e4, then we have c5, the Sicilian defense, probably the most common defense against e4. Then we have just f3, continue developing. Then we have d6, very standard, and then white just says, okay, I'm going to go straight for the attack. I'm going to go bishop b5 check. So now black has to block the check, and black most likely blocks with c6, knight c6. And instead of capturing, white says, okay, I want to keep this diagonal. So I'm just going to keep my bishop right there. You know, the knight can't move. This will always be a threat. He can never move that knight, so I'm just going to continue developing. Or even castle is an idea, so let's just castle. So white castles, and then black plays a6, so pawn a6. And now the bishop is threatened, but most players or most beginners still want to keep that diagonal, and instead of moving the bishop back, that is a very common mistake. Well, not moving the bishop back is the mistake, but this is the mistake. Many people or many beginners play a4 because they want to keep the diagonal, and that is actually that's actually the problem, because you see they have now moved their bishop to the edge, and black can happily just play b5. And now the bishop is under attack, so it has to move, and it can only move to one square because, well, there are no more squares on the left of the board. So they have to move back, and they're going to move b3, and black can just push c4, and as you can now see, the bishop is completely trapped. It can't go nowhere. So you have to capture on c4, c4, and now black is just very happy with that position because it's black is up a bishop, and all because you moved your bishop to the edge of the board, or rather the bishop was moved to the edge of the board. So as I've said, as a beginner, you should probably avoid the edge of the board altogether. If you are new to chess, you know, focus on the development in the center with these two pawns, with your knights. Bishop e3 is an idea. This bishop can always come to d3 or even c4. You know, just try to continue on the, or try to focus on the center of the board rather than the edge. I would I would state that as a general rule. Alright, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to leave a like, because then I will probably upload, you know, a few more chess videos. Until then, have a nice day, have a nice night, and of course, as always, have a nice time.